Dawntrail's Relic is over and done with now, thanks to the recent step we got a couple of weeks ago alongside the launch of the second sector of Occult Crescent. I think it's fair to say that the Relic weapons have been somewhat of a controversial discussion point for FF14 for a good long while now. We've gone from massive grinds in field operation content like the Shadowbringer's Bozja Relic to what, for all intents and purposes, was an AFK grind via Tombstone in Endwalker, all the way to what we had in this most recent expansion, where Square Enix seemingly wanted to do their best to pretend their field operation didn't exist entirely, creating this weird in-between state where the Relic weapon didn't know what it wanted to be. Today, I want to talk about it. The Relic. The concept of a Relic weapon in Final Fantasy XIV. Was Dawntrail's Relic a good send-off to the old way of doing things? Or instead, was it a failure? What is the ideal Relic, using what we've gotten in the past as a motif, and what can we hope for and expect from Evercold, where we've heard rumblings that even the current structure of progression weapons will be shaken up in some way, shape, or form? What I'm alluding to here is the fact that before we even had North American Fan Festival a couple of months ago, Yoshida made a statement in a Japanese interview mentioning that the way that they handle Relic weapons would change in the next expansion, and that they would just do something different this time around. That statement is fairly ambiguous, and in reality, it kind of could mean anything, so we'll do some predictions in that regard as well. As a quick aside before we properly jump in, if you want to support deep dives and discussions into FF14, please do consider subscribing. First, I want to talk about Dawntrail's Relic specifically. Now, firstly, I don't dislike the concept of a Relic weapon that ties directly into an expansion's field operation. I strongly believe this is an idea that can be done really well and lead to satisfying results. Do I believe it was done well in this case? Absolutely not. Ironically enough, the most recent step, which many are dubbing the Dawntrail World Tour, is in my opinion the strongest of them all. Relics are supposed to act as some kind of physical manifestation of your journey throughout the expansion. They grow with you each and every patch, follow along with you for over a year straight, and at the very end act as what is supposed to be the strongest weapon that many will get access to, as well as an aesthetically pleasing bragging right that showcases the work you put in over this extended period of time. The Dawntrail World Tour, right at the end, thematically fits this perfectly. It has you travel back down memory road, revisiting all of the locales, raids, and dungeons that you went to throughout the most recent expansion. You spend a little bit of time there, either alone or with friends, and it acts as both a moment of reminiscence and a way to say goodbye to the past as you then look forward to the future. Usually, you'll have taken enough time away from most of that content for it to feel fun as well. It's similar to what we got as a capstone for Heavensward's Anima Relic, though this time, I feel the execution is actually stronger. It's a good step, but my praise definitely begins to wear far thinner after that. Previous steps have included light farming, demi-atma farming through Fates or Occult Crescent, or legally mandated roulette filling to make sure that the player population is sustainable. All of this is uninteresting. There are some steps that I do like that made a return though, that being the inclusion of a small guild sync, as well as a way for crafters and gatherers to involve themselves in the Relic progression at various stages. These little nods towards non-combat classes are small but meaningful, and I really do think that they have value in making players from all walks of life feel a little bit more involved in this one major quest chain that acts as a linchpin for the expansion, as well as giving you a reason to interact with other players, for aiding one another or trading resources. For example, with me, I didn't bother gearing up my crafters this expansion, so I would talk to friends and get them to craft things for me. Sometimes I would help them out in other ways. It had this little marketability thing where you're giving something and getting something and bartering with one another, and it's nice. And it doesn't overstay its welcome. Again, much like those stages in Heavensward's Relic. Dawntrail's Phantom Relic struggled really hard with balancing at various stages, I feel. Oftentimes they aim to present a choice to the player. You can do X in the overworld, or Y in Occult Crescent. That was a promise, even, which they made early in the expansion, and then repeatedly broke without comment from that point onwards. But for the stages where this was true, and you did have a choice of how you wanted to handle it, there was practically always a far superior method to grind the step, which you would then use with zero thought, and the other method would find itself abandoned by the player base in short order. I think if you're going to provide players with choice on how they complete a stage of the Relic, all choices should have at least some level of equality when it comes to how efficient they are. It doesn't need to be perfect, but some effort invested there would be really, really appreciated. What you end up with is a Relic that doesn't know what it wants to be, as far as I'm concerned. It genuinely feels like they just made a quest chain by slapping together a sequence of grinds they've done in the past haphazardly, and then they just hoped that the community didn't get frustrated enough at it to complain. Honestly, my crackpot theory is that this is in part a byproduct of a course correction that Square Enix made after Occult Crescent's Southhorn received such an icy reception, where players were by and large unsatisfied with the offering they were provided. This, combined with the fact that there was no Northhorn scheduled for over a year after that, until just recently in patch 7.55, meant that Square Enix needed to ensure that players didn't have to spend any more time in that zone than they wanted to, and any potentially more intriguing plans were scrapped. That said, it could just be that this Relic was a last-minute rush job too. I could believe either one. At this point, Relics released so late in an expansion that they feel like an afterthought. Relic weapons are supposed to be one of FF14's defining long-term progression systems, but releasing them so late into an expansion undermines their purpose. By the time the Relic questline begins, many players have already geared their main jobs, finished the current raid tier, or even taken a break from the game, leaving the Relic feeling less like an expansion-spanning journey that you get emotionally invested into, and more like a box to tick later down the road that you'll just do without much thought when it comes out. Historically, Relics have worked best as content that gives casual and mid-core players a meaningful objective between major patches, encouraging them to keep logging in whilst gradually improving a weapon over the course of the expansion, as well as fulfilling the goal of funneling different types of player together. Instead, delaying the first step until so long, coming up on a year after the expansion launches, creates a long period where there's little or no persistent progression outside of weekly tombstone caps and Savage, causing interest to drop before the game's signature grind even begins. If Relics are meant to be the marathon that carries you through an expansion, they are supposed to be the product that results from your hard work. They are supposed to be the memory you take with you. They need to begin much earlier so that the journey actually lasts for the expansion rather than just popping up in its second half. Nowadays it doesn't even come out until, like I said, near enough halfway through an expansion, which I would argue is borderline criminal, seeing as the whole point of it is a weapon that grows with you over time, and when it eventually does release, it scales in power so astronomically slowly and behind the progression curve of other gear that it is worthless for any function aside from catch-up or alt jobs. It desperately needs a shot in the arm and some serious reconsideration from a functionality standpoint. If anything, you should get the base version of your Relic either on expansion launch or at the latest by patch 0.05, and from there you should receive larger, regular updates every major patch, or if they want to do it on the 0.5, they can do it there instead. To me, Relics are simple. They are intended to do a few things. Act as a long-term progression goal. Provide a method to funnel players from all walks of life together into a single part of the game at various times, so that they get a chance to natively interact with one another. It's also supposed to track your journey across an expansion, and at the end of it, act as a representation of it, and get you to do a variety of things that you wouldn't usually do. If they can tick all of those boxes whilst being fun, it's a good relic. The reason this matters is because relics are one of the few systems in the game that can genuinely bring the entire player base together around one shared objective. Unlike raid weapons, which are primarily tied to either a specific skill requirement, and you'll either do that in the static or in Party Finder, relics have historically been a common thread that allows players from all different backgrounds to work together towards the same long-term goal. A well-designed relic gives raiders, crafters, gatherers, the dreaded term midcore players, casual players, and everyone in between a reason to participate in that same moment, that same ecosystem, by moving players through different areas of the game and encouraging them to engage with content they might normally ignore or might be done with. Relics create this natural opportunity for interaction and for communities to build as a result. The process itself becomes one of the most memorable parts of it, and as a result is part of the reward, because the journey exposes players to experiences and people they might not have met otherwise. At least that's how I see it. Arguably, when done right, it's the most MMO this MMO gets. At the end of an expansion, a relic should feel like a representation of everything that came before it. It should tell the story of that expansion through the places players visited, the activities they completed, the challenges they overcame, and the memories they made. The weapon should serve as a record of your journey, not just a piece of equipment with increasingly larger numbers and a glow attached to it that you don't have any kind of connection to. A successful relic gives players a reason to keep engaging with the game over a long period of time, while also encouraging variety in how they spend their time. If a relic can provide that long-term progression, it can unite different parts of the community, it can encourage players to explore content outside of their norm, and ultimately become a symbol of the expansion it belonged to, then it's achieved what it should. One issue is that thanks to the massive content portfolio available now, and the fact that player counts drop in later patches, Square Enix have been using it as a system to forcibly populate Duty Finder for newer players, by bringing those older players back into the queues because they go there for their relic weapon. It's a means to an end. They're using it to fulfill a goal rather than a thoughtful decision made with the intention of making the player experience more fun for the people actually doing the relic. On top of this, as an aside, can we bring back those relic armors and make them feel like they tie into the journey as well? With all that in mind, what am I hoping for when it comes to Evercold's relic? What can we expect, realistically? I think if we're going to be actually realistic, we have to look at two things quite clearly. The Cosmic Exploration editions made in Dawntrail, and the fact that they are planning to transition to a seasonal model that mimics the same timeline and growth as the current patch cycle. I didn't do very much Cosmic Exploration, but it was this expansion's crafting and gathering endgame content, it had relics tied to it, and it was by and large far more well received. Cosmic Exploration is actually fairly similar to a field exploration style of relic like Eureka or Boscia, but instead designed specifically for disciples of Hand and Land. It requires the content to be done in a specific zone which is created and is bespoke for that relic, and they release a new area with every major patch after, I believe, 7.2 was the first one. Just like Eureka, it requires grinding missions for resources on repeat, with not too much deviation aside from random events like red alerts and mech ops, which I would argue are far better done for reasons other than relic progression. This is extremely reminiscent of fate farming in Eureka. There are a number of side rewards and achievements for interacting with the content and the zone. There are also little side objectives, like you can do the Cosmic Fortunes, you can accrue credits for each of the planets, there are mount tokens, and the 500k mount reward for investing a lot of effort into all of the jobs cumulatively. There are all sorts of these little side projects that you can focus on and work on, whilst also building progression on your relic. It is this really well-balanced mixture of grinding for additional power and in order to complete that relic for whatever purpose, maybe it's glamour, but it also respects your time, and it provides an outlet for those who simply wish to interact with the content and get other things from it. I wouldn't want this to happen in some new special zone, but instead, in the open world and in Evercold duties, factoring in those new world bosses and presumably events in the open world that have been teased. Something like that would be a fresh outlook that I'd be interested in seeing at least once, and with the caveat that it is as long as it's not fate farming again. For those who didn't do much, here is a basic explanation on how the system works. In order to work on your relic, you complete cosmic missions or red alerts in order to earn research points. Higher tier missions generally give you either more or higher tier research points. Now, you're given a lot of choice in how you make progress. You could instead farm lower tier missions if you're less comfortable with gathering or crafting rotations, or if you haven't melded your gear, or if in general your gear is worse. Or instead, you could tackle more difficult quests in order to get more progression per minute. Upon earning enough research points for the tool that you want to upgrade, you speak to an NPC, you upgrade it, and you obtain the next step. Then, that unlocks the next tier of upgrades, and you can start to work on the next tier of quests, and you can start working on the next requirement of research points. There is not one level per patch. There are a number of levels per patch, so this is something you're going to loop back to repeatedly on a patchly basis. Once you finish a tier of tool for a specific area or stage of the relic, it will record the research for that planet as complete for that tool. You also get bonuses for completing tools that will then speed up the progression of completing more tools on that planet. After completing one, you'll get a 50% research point bonus for the other tools working on that tier or below. So if you finish, let's say the moon tool for example, all the other tools that are at the moon or below will then benefit from that 50% bonus. After 3 tools on a specific planet, your boost will go up to 100%. After 5, it will go up to 150% bonus, which is the cap, meaning that the 6th all the way through to the last tool complete at a rate of 2.5 times the initial rate. The tool then also offers solid stats and bonus effects that help with both crafting and gathering. So, you're constantly getting a better tool as you work on it, which helps you do the tool grind more efficiently. With combat content, this could be far more refined. This is good because I am very much in the boat that a first relic should take a long time, but all future ones should be expedited. I'm actually a fan of the current system where you have to do full steps for one relic, and then you can purchase alternative job relics with tomestones. It's boring, but it has the right effect. A catch-up mechanic for alternative jobs, where you do the same thing but faster, that I can absolutely get behind. I also feel this may be more friendly to the seasonal model they have going next expansion. I think I prefer this more incremental kind of progress, with a number of goals to work towards, which you can then, to an extent, pick and choose between, ranging in difficulty and grind, with each giving you some kind of growth towards that next weapon, and each weapon influencing how hard you have to work on the next. Using the open world improvements to get us out there more, and spending time in those places, ideally doing far more than just a fate grind for the umpteenth time, and ideally interacting with other people, that would be great as well. Mixing and matching instanced and open world content, new things and those slightly older, providing variety in spades, but still fulfilling the act of funneling players together. These relic missions could act as a long-term, choice-driven goal for players and a reason for people to get together. If they are able to pull it off correctly, it could be really good. I stated it earlier, I'm pretty sure, but job gear, relic gear that is, should be part of this equation too, with each job getting a unique set. If you want to lean more fully into job fantasy and choice in FF14, make it provide a set bonus of some sorts, and as a balancing tool, keep it slightly behind the highest available item level gear at the time, so that it won't come into week 1 progression of Savage and Ultimate, but it still provides fun and interesting benefits that change play to an extent in easier content. They could also use relics as a test bed to provide more custom animations as rewards. Imagine unlocking a unique idle pose or victory pose for completing a relic, and there's one for each job. Suddenly, you have a goal that everybody wants to chase without making alterations to the gearing curve whatsoever. We likely aren't getting another field exploration zone next expansion, and if anything, I see that as a good thing. I'll talk more about it in my Occult Present post-mortem, which comes out quite soon. As an aside, I'm working on that next after this video. I leveled the Phantom jobs, I did all of the fates and critical engagements, and I cleared both the normal and extreme tower now. So, that'll come soon, but I think a couple of years off from it to rethink it entirely, while still retaining what made them beloved in the first place from Eureka and Boscia, that could be good. Similarly, untangling the Relic from their shackles and building a solid baseline means that in 9.0, when I assume field operations will return, they can mesh the two from a far healthier starting point and create something fun, like truly fun. We don't need more field operations. We need good relics that can live on their own merits. I guess overall, my hopes for relics are quite simple. I want them to retain what made them good in the past. The community aspect, the progression, and the choice, but not too much, with a variety of different challenges, but to get out of their current state where I very much feel they're a bit lost in the source. I honestly do think that stealing the baseline structure of cosmic exploration tools and reworking it in such a way that it functions well with combat content, prioritizing variety, fun, and a mixture of open world and instanced content could be a really solid play from the developers. I want to feel the progress. I want it to come far earlier in the expansion, and I want to be genuinely rewarded for interacting extensively with that system. Relics can be really good, so make them good. I believe, and hopefully soon enough, I trust as well.